Yeah, but I have to have no filter and be completely honest, try not to offend everybody, yet have people take me seriously. How the hell am I going to pull that off? That's a good idea. It's been a while, but here we go. Old school JCS, trustworthy, serious mechanic. And man, I hope I don't regret this. Let's do this. Alright guys, welcome back to the shop. This is the best way to do this. I've determined it. Trustworthy mechanic, Johnny Nitrous shirt, which is like Superman's cape if Superman was a belligerent psychopath. But it's kind of the way I need to approach this. So the end result of all this, and the point of this video, I'm going to show you how you can take a squish measurement, which we all know how to do, and with that measurement, you can determine how much material you need to take off of your squish and your base, which is half of building a sod. I'm not going to say porting, because porting is grinding, machining is done on a lathe. You have to do both. So this whole argument, compression, machining, and all that, it's a weird deal. There seems to be a group of people that want to make it seem like they've reinvented the way that you can build a two-stroke and you don't need to do any machining or do anything with compression. You just need to do a bunch of grinding and it's some secret recipe and it's ridiculous. So how this all started with me, I had a pretty big following before I hit YouTube. So when I hit YouTube, I got some subscribers right away and I started gaining a little steam, and then people started asking what I thought about compression, machining, all that. And I thought it was really weird. Like, why are people asking me this? Like, would you ask your contractor, hey man, you gonna build the whole house or just the bottom half? I mean, that's kind of how I look at it. Like, yeah, I'm gonna do the whole sod. I mean, I don't do a half build. So then it was like, all of a sudden I was labeled this, I was one of the compression guys or one of the machining guys, and oh shit. Johnny Nitrous heard that, and he's all bent out of shape because you guys tried to label us. I mean me. But now you guys get to deal with him. I can't deal with this shit. First mistake, trying to label Johnny Nitrous. Mistake B, trying to understand what goes on inside this complex brain of mine. Y'all can't handle it. To say that I march to the beat of a different drum is an understatement. I got a drunk mariachi band on roller skates up in here. Don't you forget it. I'm not gonna lie, that's like the most civilized I've ever heard him, but he is on probation and he's not drunk yet. It's only 10:30, so let's not piss him off anymore. What the hell was I saying? Alright, that didn't last long, so hopefully we can just remain calm and get through this without any more Johnny Nitrous appearances. But let's just look at it from a simple point of view, because people that do have a lot of knowledge in two-strokes and engines can try to make it seem like what they're doing is the right way or the best way. But that's just a lot of wordsmithing and smooth talking. Let's look at this from a real simple point of view, and I'm going to prove to you that this is just a ridiculous argument. So let's make two imaginary groups of people, because that sounds like a brilliant idea. Got guys over here that do porting and machining. I'd be considered part of this group. A fully built, what I call production saw. Got guys over here that just do porting, no machining. What do these guys have in common? If you look into it, they don't have a lathe. Lathes are expensive. It's a whole skill set you got to acquire. It's a lot to get wired in. Takes up room in your shop. Pain in the ass. But that's what they all have in common. If they get a lathe, they quietly walk over to this group. These guys all have lathes, or they do what I used to do. I used to get these measurements, like I'm going to show you, and send them off. Then I would do the porting. But you can't just skip the porting or the machining because you don't have a lathe. That's ridiculous. You're screwing your customer. Now, what really should drive this home, nobody that has a lathe that builds saws doesn't use it. Kind of tells you a lot. Nobody that builds saws this way builds saws for production guys, for loggers. Doesn't happen. I know a lot of them. It's kind of my thing. I build saws for wildfire guys, production guys. It doesn't happen. Nobody that builds a saw like this builds them for production guys. The end. So there you go. No fancy technical talk, just reality. I mean, look at it from a real simple, like common sense, I should say, point of view. Why is that? Everything I just said, why is that? Because you need to do both. You need to do porting and machining. Hell, the machining is damn near more important than the porting. If I had to choose one or the other, I would choose the machining. No joke. Especially since I dome my pistons. I mean, it's a no-brainer. To say that you can do just porting, I'll tell you this. You can improve your saw a little bit by just porting. So a lot of these guys over here won't even agree with that. But you can make it better with only porting. You can't gain torque. You can't gain torque though. It just don't happen. The compression equals torque equals power. And that has to be done with machining. There's no other way to do it. You could put a pop-up piston in it. That's about the only other thing you could do. But there are people over here that are teaching people and explaining to people that this is how you build a saw. They're not doing pop-ups. They're not doing any of that stuff. They're teaching people the wrong way. And there are a lot of people that have done their saws that I've talked to or have gotten saws built like that are not happy with them. And once they get them machined, it has opened their eyes. It's like a whole new world. And this thing is so close to being done with. I can't believe it's an argument, but it is. Now, the people in this group, I'm going to call you guys out a little bit because I know what you guys are doing. You guys tell me all this drama and like people over here are saying now that bearings fail if you do too much compression and all that. And it's all bullshit. Bearings don't fail from too much compression. You'll snap a connecting rod or two or three in my case, but you don't break a bearing. That's ridiculous. But these guys, they feed me this information because I don't watch any videos for any saw builders really. It's work to me. But they tell me this stuff because they know I'm going to come out and say something. But you guys need to say something too. I can't be the only one that comes out and says, this is bullshit. And again, I'm just telling the truth. So if you're mad about this, if you feel like you need to defend yourself, this video is actually for you. And I'm going to show you, if you do what I'm about to tell you to do, you're going to have a better running saw. And there's no ill intent. Look at it that way. So we got the cutaway here, and man, I use this thing all the time. I'm glad I made this. But I want to show you guys what a squish of 29 thousandths looks like. And this is a gasket delete. I didn't bother to cut the gasket in half when I put this back together. So you can see how thin, we're at top dead center right there. 29 thousandths for squish clearance is not a lot. And they are angled. The squish band is angled from factory. What I'm doing is I'm cutting, when I do machine squish, which again, I don't do a whole lot of machining to the squish because I do a domed piston and I'm matching the angle more to the squish, but you can imagine this having an angle cut in it. I think I'm going to dome a piston so I can show it as an example sometime, but I'm matching that angle more, and then my piston is going to go up further because I'm also decking the cylinder, shaving some off the base, and I'm filling that combustion chamber in. And then it also helps for a number of different things, for flow, because you're not flat on your exhaust roof when your exhaust stroke, and then also your transfers, your uppers, when it starts to take in the charge to fill up the top end, it's got an angle to it. It just helps so much. You can actually hear, I can hear the difference between a dome piston and a flat top piston. No joke, 100%. As soon as I hear it, I can definitely tell. But just gonna show you guys, that's the difference of 29 thousandths. So now I'll put you in the tripod so you're not getting motion sickness, and we'll talk about this for a sec. Now the problem with raising your exhaust port and not doing anything with your cylinder is quite simply this. Now let's get a marker. Let's say you raise your exhaust port, I'm being pretty extreme here, but to the top of this black mark, okay? And this is just for an easy example, it would be quite extreme. That's a lot of material, but it's gonna prove my point. So now on your upstroke, instead of sealing off from here up, you're only sealing off from here up. That's less charge, because when your exhaust port is open, the corner of your piston, the top of your piston, whatever you want to call it, when that is open, your exhaust is going out, okay? So your exhaust would be going out. Here it starts to close it off. Now you're building compression. So if you raise your exhaust way up here, your exhaust is still open right here. Now it's starting to close off. Now you're building compression. That volume is a lot less than this volume, okay? So you're taking less charge and you're squeezing it in to the same area. Whereas if you do machining, you're dropping your whole cylinder down, and when your piston comes up, you have a smaller area in your combustion chamber and squish band, so you're compressing the same amount of charge into a smaller area. And I use a water balloon as an example. Take a water balloon and tie the knot on it. Once that knot is tied, that is basically your port closing off, okay? Otherwise, you don't have a knot in the balloon. You can squeeze the balloon all you want, the water's gonna piss out the end. Now the knot is tied. So now you're taking a water balloon and you're squeezing it down into a very small area. You're compressing it. But now you have less water because your water's been pissing out. Now your water balloon, now your knot's tied, and you're taking that balloon and squeezing it down. And compression equals torque. Compression, think of compression in the most simple terms as the force that is driving your crankshaft. And yes, there's more to it than that, but in all reality, compression is torque. Torque is needed on production saws. I hear the term firewood saw being thrown around, and I'll be honest, I don't know what people mean by firewood saw, because I've heard this in defense that you don't need a lot of compression on a firewood saw. I don't know what that means. I'll be straight up honest, but the firewood that I cut, because I'm a firewood guy, I cut firewood for my in-laws, and the firewood that I cut, I'm bucking huge logs that they just split it if they need to, if it's too big, but I'm bucking huge stuff. So I don't understand what they mean by firewood saw. Are they literally cutting logs like this big, like pop can size logs, and just want tons of RPMs? If that's the case, I guess, yeah, you could get away with doing a build and only porting. But for a production saw or a customer, you need to have torque, because otherwise you're building a 660 or 661 that can only cut small cuts. I would rather have a torquey saw and just upsize the sprocket, gear it so it can run faster chain speed. And when you have torque, chain speed isn't everything. Even with somewhat small to medium cuts, if you have torque, I don't care how good your chain speed is, when your saw falls flat on its face in a cut, a torquey saw is going to cut faster. If you have a razor sharp chain and you can keep the R's up, you got somebody that's really good at running it, yeah, you can make one of these low compression saws look okay, but in the real world, it's not gonna, again, no pun intended, it's not gonna cut it. So now, when we are talking about machining the squish and machining the base, it's quite simply machining this ring around the outside of the cylinder, and I'm going to talk about this in a second, and cutting the base, the bottom of the cylinder. So let's check out what I mean by that. It's set up on the base plate for cut and squish with a boring bar, which I'm terrible at, takes me forever, but can do it. And here's the squish cut. That's what it looks like when it's done. Basically machine that outer ring. And here's one on the lathe cutting the base or decking. Pretty basic. And here's a piston that's cut. So when I say domed or machined piston, this is what I'm talking about. So thousandths of an inch. Again, this is stuff that you guys should understand before you get this far into a build, but here we have 1,000th. Okay, here is 10 thousandths. Here is 100 thousandths. So just be clear on that. And if you hear me say 20 thou or 40 thou, I'm talking thousandths of an inch. And there we go. Now we should be ready to kind of get into this. Okay, so we have the cylinder drawn out here. I know not the best, but we've got all the ports on there. That don't really matter. For this, what we need to know is how much we want to take off of the base and out of the squish. So whatever amount you take out of the squish band is kind of going to be something that you're going to have to determine for yourself. There's no math involved in it, though. It's going to be just a number that you like, the way that you build your saws. Whether you cut it in at 0 degrees or straight, flat, whatever you want to call it, or you give it a little bit of an angle, again, up to you. But for the sake of easy math and to give a realistic number, we're going to say 40 thousandths for all these examples, okay? So with that said, that number is not going to change. Doesn't matter what your squish clearance is to start with, that number is going to be 40 thousandths. And for the sake of easy math and a realistic number, we're going to shoot for an end result of 20 thousandths squish. All right? Let's just use an example before we actually do real saws of we took the squish and it was 30 thousandths, okay? So 30 thousandths was our squish to start with. We're taking off 40, so that's going to widen it out even more. So now we're getting further from from 20 is where we want to be. So you guys that have, decent with math, you already know what you need to do. So you add this number and this number, that's going to give you 70. So to get to 20, what do you need to do? You need to take 50 off the base. So when you're cutting the squish, it's widening. You're getting further from 20. And when you cut the base, you're getting closer to 20. Okay? So 30 we started with. 40 is what we're taking off the squish. That gives us 70. We take off 50 to get to 20. All right, so a new example. Let's say we had 40. So we took 40 plus 40, again, this is not changing, is 80 thousandths. We need to get to 20, so we're taking 60 thousandths. If you're already at 20, simple. You take 40 and 40. So you're back to 20. You know what I mean? So that's why I say, like, if you take a saw that you had done and you're just not happy with it, take 30 off of the squish and 40 off of the base, because that's going to tighten you up by 10 degrees. Otherwise, take a squish clearance and say if you did a gasket delete and you're at 28 thousandths, so you'd take 28, and if you're going to go, let's change it, no, let's not change it, we'll go 40. So 28 plus 40, 68. Okay, we need to get to 20, 48. Does that make sense? So let's do a couple actual saws, and we'll see where they're at, and then we will run it through on an actual 500i here, see what we come up with. All right, we all know how to take squish. I don't want to move this because my numbers are going to stay there for editing. So I got solder, we're just smashing it in the squish band. I like to get in a few different places. Sometimes I'll color my solder if I take a squish on a saw that I'm not popping the jug on, just to see where it's at. Because you can, if you pinch it off, it'll fall off into your cylinder. So digital calipers, obviously we know how to use these. We're gonna say, okay, it's 33 thousandths. That's how you read on a digital caliper. Remember the examples I showed you before of how thousandths of an inch is? And it'll read out to this 0, and I think it just goes 0 or 5, but I don't worry about that number. We're talking, that's it. That measurement is literally non-existent. Okay, so I got my pointer back. All right, so again, we're gonna shoot for 20. That was 33 thousandths. 33 thou, taking off 40, 73. We need to get to 20, 53. It's that simple. That makes sense? Well, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and try to pound this out in an algebra formula, and it's been a long ass time. I'm pretty sure this is gonna be, well, I shouldn't say pretty sure. I'm 50-50 on whether this is right or not, but if people learn easier this way, I'm willing to humiliate myself. So I don't know, let's see what happens. So at least we'll get a good laugh out of this, but I think I know how to run this out. So we're gonna say the squish that we start with on the saw is A, okay? And then the amount you're taking out of the squish, the amount you get machined, we call that B. And our target squish, which 20 thousandths, that's what we want to end up with. I know we know the number, but we're gonna give it a letter. And we're trying to figure out what our base is, how much to take off the base. So we're gonna get crazy and call that X. I literally think this is X equals A plus B in parentheses minus C, right? And I know we have numbers for a lot of this, but that's the whole point of algebra, right? You fill it in with numbers. But if I'm wrong, don't you dare say something in the comments, because this is my moment. Damn it, this is my moment, don't you ruin it. But I'm a mechanic, not a mathematician. But either way, if it's not right, just have a good laugh to yourself. But god damn it, don't say nothing in the comments. But no, I think that's right. So if you had an example, we'll use the first example we used, which we said that the starting squish was 30 thousandths, so A would be 30 thousandths. We're taking 40 thou off, and then we want to get to 20, so we take, X, that's the base, that's the height we want, equals A plus B, which would be 70, minus C, which would be 20, and that's 50. God damn, I think that's right. Alright guys, if any of that was confusing to you, or you don't understand what the relationship between degrees,
thousandths of an inch, how it's going to affect your port timing and all that. You're probably not ready to take that step and send your cylinder off. But once you are there, I'm telling you, if you're doing only the porting and you're getting results, especially if you're getting results, you're only doing half the build. So if you get it machined, you are going to be blown away. It's half the build. It's what's going to give you your torque. So here we got the 460 hybrid out here, and I got this done a little while back before I had my last spell of being crazy sick. I didn't do a video yet, but all the machining is figured out. I guess there's a few people that said that you can't do this, but what we have here is a 460 with a 064 big bore 56 millimeter cylinder, a 661 piston, and listen to this beautiful sound. Ready? Hear that? Yeah. No more. Brrr. Holy hell, what a mess figuring this out. There was so much grinding to the crankcase and crank and everything on this. It's ridiculous. In the cylinder, the outside of the cylinder to get this thing to drop down in there. So it's a hell of a tight fit. Someone asked me why I didn't do a 660 big bore to get to 56 millimeter. I'm pretty sure I had looked into that, and you got to take it. It's so hard to fit down in here. I mean, just everything is tight. Look at the flywheel. Look how tight that is. Just crazy. I had to machine the exhaust port. I had to machine this. You can see that. See all my machining marks? But anyway, I had to basically mill that back and then change the angle a little bit so the muffler would go on. But this thing's going to be absolutely wild. I just don't have the time, and I'm so far behind. But it's not too far, and this will be ready to go. My squish is where I want it. It will be running NOS. So every time I say this has got to be the first, I get somebody that's like, oh no, Dickie Fartlong did it back in 1985. But if you're going to say that someone's built a frickin' 460 with a 56 millimeter 064 top end or cylinder with a 661 piston, a vane crank, a 64 carb, running nitrous, I call bullshit. I got to see it. You got to show me proof this time, because I guarantee it. This is the first time anybody's ever done this. All right. Stay rowdy, my friends. Won't be long. Yep. This is what I think. This is the raddest thing I've ever seen in my life. Really?